Oh, great.
I'm sorry? No, this is a public meeting.
All right,
Hey, Laura.
so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Moore.
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Here.
Councilman Iacilli.
Here.
Councilman Pell.
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
All right, so this morning we need to start with a brief executive session, and then we'll come back for the rest of the work session. So I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss acquisitions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think things applied in any.
So I don't know if I need to do this, but I motion to reconvene the work session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your patience. We've got, the next on the agenda is an update on the Steinbeck House. Why don't you both come on up if you'd like and join us at the table?
You could join us at the table.
More casual.
We discussed, do you want to be at the podium so you
Shoot,
can
whatever
see
you
the
feel,
screens?
whatever you want.
Whatever you-
Whatever's more
We did
comfortable.
discuss
Oh, okay.
this.
It'll
Okay.
be easier there.
Okay.
Okay. You
Which
call
is,
the
this
shots,
is
John.
homier, I get it.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be that close to us.
Screens are
Well,
behind
actually,
you.
that, I have had bronchitis
Oh.
for 10 days, so you probably don't want to be that close to me either. Anyway, thank you very much for having us here. My name is Diana Howard, and I am the co-president of the Steinbeck House Advisory Board. And Lori Ramondo is here with me. She's also on the board, and she's in charge of the docents at the house. So we thought it'd be a good time just to give you an update of everything that we have done and accomplished through the last year. First, we want to say thank you very much to the town of Southampton, and I'm sorry those pictures aren't bigger, but these are a plaque that we have on a boulder in the yard, and in the plaque it talks about the house being preserved. It also thanks the town of Southampton, and it lists the council members that were on the council at the time that it was preserved. So Councilwoman McNamara's name is on there, and Councilman Tommy John Scavoni's name is on there also. Thank you very much. We also have a plaque inside the house, the Founders Wall, and the town of Southampton it shows up much better when you're in the house than it does on the picture. But the town of Southampton is at the very top of the plaque because of the size of your donation with the CPF grant fund. And again, Councilwoman McNamara's name is on there, and Councilmember Scavoni's name is on there. So thank you very much. Without that donation from the town of Southampton, we would not have been able to preserve the house, to open it to visitors, and to have it used as a writer's retreat. We also, this is just a picture of commemorative bricks. We sold these while we were raising money to pay for the purchase of the house. And they're scattered through the front patio and the back patio. We just took out bricks that were disintegrating. And there's some interesting, you see Colson Whitehead and his family have bricks there. So it's kind of fun when the visitors come on the tours to see the names. We have some other authors who have some bricks out there. We were so excited when we closed on the property last year. We closed on March 30th, 2023. We opened for visitors Memorial Day weekend 2023. But we realized we had a lot of work ahead of us. So in that time period from the closing to when we opened Memorial Day weekend, we formed a board. We had to draft and adopt bylaws, draft and adopt articles of incorporation, hire a web designer, write all the content for the website. The website's what took reservations, so we had to get that up. We also had to find volunteer docents, write all the docent training materials and train the docents, and then advertise that we were open, which we did, and we opened. We realized later that maybe we could have picked a soft opening of one Saturday instead of a holiday weekend with 3 days or 6 hours apiece, but after that everything seemed a lot easier. We formed the advisory board, and on the advisory board, those are all the members of the people on the advisory board. On the board we have 2 neighborhood representatives, someone from Bluff Point Lane, someone from Bluff Point Road. That's been very helpful because we have had fabulous neighbor support since we have been open, and that's helped with the communication. We also have Tommy John Scavoni's on the board representing the town. Julie Green has just recently joined the board, the Southampton town historian. Kelly Harris, the director of the John Germain Library. Ed Hay from the village of Sag Harbor. Charlie Friedge, who's a teacher at Pearson High School, is also on the board. And so we have a number of community representatives representing different constituencies within the community. What our board does primarily is community outreach. So that consists of tours, the writer in residence outreach programs, and then the high school writing workshop. So for the tours, these are just some pictures of the tours in front of the house, in front of the writing gazebo. I know that Supervisor Moore was at the house over Labor Day weekend. These are just some of our younger visitors to the house. So the tours are they're easy to schedule. You just go on our website. They're all free, but we do limit it to 10 people an hour because of our access agreement with the town of Southampton and with the neighbors. They're led by volunteer docents. On the holiday weekends, we have the Hampton Hopper who picks up the visitors in front of Barron's Cove and brings them. And that's just to keep the traffic on the lane and the road to a minimum for the neighbors. And then, like I said, we've had great neighborhood support. Here's a picture of the homepage of our website. And not only do we have information about the purchase, information about how the town of Southampton helped us with that, but it's where you go to schedule your visit too.
But you only have visits inside the house on the holiday weekends?
That's right. Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and Columbus Day weekend. And that's in large part because it's also used as the writer's residence when we have writers there. And so we tried to limit that so that the writers could live there without having people coming through.
But if people wanted to just see the exterior and the outbuildings, they can come anytime?
On Saturdays.
Any
So
Saturday.
Saturdays 12 to 4, and it's most of the Saturdays through the year. And we always have docents there, so we don't have visitors on the property without a docent.
Okay.
Just to, one, to help impart the information, but also just for safety reasons too.
And security. There's artifacts on the property, and, so.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've had over 1,000 visitors since we've opened, primarily town of Southampton, New York State, but we've also had visitors from other states and other countries, including England, Ireland. 3 visitors this summer were recreating the Travels with Charlie journey, and they wanted to start there. We did have to counsel one of them that he could not bring his huge van down there and park it to start because we thought the neighbors might not be happy about that. But it's been people from this area, Steinbeck fans, and then, like I said, people from other countries. So we advertise for the tours. We typically have newspaper ads before the open house weekends in the Southampton paper, the Sac Harbor paper. We have a Facebook site, Instagram. We're on Nextdoor. We advertise on 27 East, and we have palm cards that we have at hotels in the Sac Harbor Windmill just to help get the word out. And docents, these are a picture from a docent party we had last fall just to celebrate the people who were volunteering to lead the tours. And Lori can answer any questions about docents if you have questions, and Julie Green has actually just started docenting at the property also. But we've got 3 stages of training, so anyone who wants to be a docent has to attend a tour. Then they come to a docent training. We give them all kinds of information about Steinbeck and the tour, and then we watch them give a tour, and then they docent. And Lori also is in charge of our record keeping after the tours, so she keeps track every day the number of people who've registered for every Saturday, the number of people who've registered for the tour, the number of people who come to the tour, the number of people who may just drop in even though you're not supposed to drop in, so that we keep a good record of how many people have been there and when they've been there. This is just a picture of the hopper that we use on the open house weekends to help alleviate traffic concerns and parking concerns from the neighbors. And then our writers in residence. We've had 4 writers since we've opened. Ayad Akhtar was here. He was here for a brief period last summer, and he won a Pulitzer Prize for his play called Disgraced. Carrie Moore was here last fall. Hernan Diaz was here this summer. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 2023 for his novel Trust. And then Eileen Chong is the writer that we have there right now.
Now, the writers in residence, are they writing anything that they are working on, or does it have to be related to John Steinbeck?
No, it can be anything that they're working on. They don't have to be Steinbeck scholars.
And what's the feedback been from the writers being on the property?
They have loved it.
I mean,
They have really enjoyed it because it's so peaceful. And it's interesting, Hernan Diaz had some really good feedback this summer. He came, he had his wife, and he has a daughter who's going into 8th grade. And the daughter was there for part of the time. And he said that he thinks as this residency gets more and more attention, it's going to be one that it's going to be very coveted for a couple of reasons. One, the University of Texas gives the writers a stipend when they're there. And his wife, for example, does freelance cinematography. And the stipend allowed his family to be with him while he was there. And then the other thing he said, especially for women, because he was able to bring, I mean, it shouldn't be this way for women, but there are a lot of residencies where only the author gets to go. You can't take your family. And he said he has heard from female authors that sometimes that is a deterrent to them accepting a residency someplace if they can't go with their family. So he loved it. He's already angling for an invitation back. That's between the Michener Center and Hernan, but it's had really good feedback. So each of the writers has to have a community outreach program. So here's a picture from Carrie Moore's program last fall. She did a memoir writing workshop at the Eastfield Community Historical Society. And while Carrie was there, Carrie was a recent graduate of the Michener Center. She worked on a novel and a short story collection, and she's just heard that a short story collection that she wrote while she was there is going to be published.
Hmm.
This was this summer. Hernan Diaz did a discussion and reading at Christ Episcopal Church, and we had a good crowd. I mean, it was really, we had the sign up go up, and it was full within 48 hours. So it was great. The Michener Center has done a great job of getting, for the summer writer, big names. And then Eileen is here now, and she's going to do her presentation on making them likable, writable. How do we present questionable behavior without condoning it? And that will be at the John Germain Library on October 27th. So we've just been working. Kelly Harris has been great to work with. She got us the room, and she's going to work to have the registration go through the library. And this is sort of a byproduct of having the Steinbeck House here. So Brett Anthony Johnson, who is the head of the Michener Center, who runs the Writers Program, had a new novel come out this summer. It came out on July 30th, and at the invitation of Canio's, Catherine Zoika, he did the reading the day it came out for free at Christ Episcopal Church in Sag Harbor. So again, he wasn't a writer in residence, but that wouldn't have happened without the connection we have with the Michener Center up here. And then we had our first high school writing workshop. We had it last February. So we had 12 students. We invited all the area high schools to select 2 students to come. So we had 12 participate. It started with a tour of the Steinbeck House, and then we moved to the library for the work part. We initially thought about having the whole thing in the house, but the problem was with that many students, there just wasn't a place for them to spread out and to actually work. So we did the tour. The Hopper then took him to the house, and then, Hopper then took him from the house to the library, and then we had the workshop at the library. And we got great feedback from that too, not only from the instructors who were there, who brought their students there, but from the students themselves. We're hoping to move that. It'll be the spring this year, but we're in contact with our contact at Pearson right now to try and find some good dates in the spring that don't interfere with testing dates and those sort of things. But we like the schools to be able to select the students earlier so that if they're seniors who were there, they might be able to include it on college applications or things like that. We realized last spring that though it was great, the students weren't able to use that on resumes or that sort of thing if they were going to college. So we're hoping to get the selection moved up. And then in terms of security, we're going to add a gate across the driveway in the next couple of weeks. It's already been designed, it's ready to go, just to keep people from wandering on the property when we don't have tours. We're also in the midst of reviewing other security systems, and the University of Texas hired a property manager because under our agreement, they run the writers program, but they're also in charge of insurance and maintenance for the property. And so they've hired a property manager who takes care of things there. The house has been designated a landmark in the Village of Sag
Does
Harbor.
that person live near there, the property manager, or does
He
he?
does.
He
lives
doesn't
in
live
Sag
on
Harbor.
site.
He does, not on site, but he lives in Sag Harbor. And,
He's a local guy.
yeah, he's a local guy. He's does this for other properties, but I think we got them the name of 2 or 3 different people that we thought might work, and then they interviewed, they picked Howard Mitch, and, he's been great.
That's great to have him.
Made my life a lot easier.
Yeah,
because
sure.
when they were running out of heating oil and things like that, I was getting the first call, and so it's great that we have someone that the writer just knows that's the person you call if there's something that is a problem there. And then we're working with Zach Student-Roth. We've just entered into an agreement with him, and he's going to do the paperwork to have us listed, or hopefully have us listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And then just thank you. We wouldn't have been able to preserve the property for generations of writers and visitors without the town of Southampton. So we really want to thank you.
Well,
And
thank you for taking such good care of it.
And Lori and I are happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions.
Sure, Diana, I want to thank you and Lori and really everybody who has volunteered to do work on the Steinbeck House. There's a whole team of you. This is just really the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of people who are very invested in this project, and I know that you're not getting paid for any of this, so it's truly a labor of love, to do this, and it's going quite well. I just want to just a couple of things for the board's edification. That the University of Texas, we chose them as a partner because the Michener Center already had a writing program with writers' retreats, and they also hold the largest collection of Steinbeck writings in the world. So they came on and they were a willing partner, and they're paying for a lot of the things, the upkeep for the house, the fuel oil that you mentioned, and the property managers. So
The landscaping.
the landscaping.
And
Right.
they've been actively raising money for the endowment for this.
Mhm.
Someone from Texas was up this summer meeting with Texas donors as opposed to the Steinbeck House donors to actively raise an endowment for their care and management of the property.
Mm-hmm. And it was actually the board's idea to come here now that we have 2 summers, an entire year and 2 summers under our belt. We know how the thing's working, and so we can come back to the board. And a lot of the new board members might have questions about what's going on over there and how it's working. But I certainly want to appreciate you, the neighbors, and the community that have picked this up as well.
Well, as you said, it is a group effort. Like
Mhm.
without Lori, who communicates with the docents all the time and is in charge of helping us find new docents and train them, we couldn't do it. Catherine Zoik has been a huge part of this, and Canios has been a huge part of this from the beginning too. So it's truly been a group effort.
Right, and the community outreach events have been fantastic. They're free. You get to meet Hernan Diaz, a Pulitzer Prize winning author, in 2023. That's just fantastic, and it really, I think it is working the way we wanted it to work.
I think that's right. I mean, it was an amazing byproduct for me was I got to pick up Hernan Diaz at the jitney stop and take him to King Cullen, and I thought, when else am I going to get to spend that much time with a Pulitzer Prize winning author? So it has been great, and that was a great community event.
I just want to say thank you so much for your work. As somebody who majored in English in my undergrad, it's great to see. And also tell Catherine I said hi, by the way.
She was very sorry not to be here. As you all know,
it's okay.
she's moving
Yes,
out this week, but that's the only thing that would have stopped her from being here today.
Yeah, she's great. Are there any prospects in the future? I understand you're partnered with the University of Texas. Are there any prospects in the future to partner with Stony Brook University or Suffolk Community College, given that this is such a local staple and such an important part of Long Island history? Is there any thoughts about ways to partner with Stony Brook or Suffolk Community College in the future so that I think there would be great interest on behalf of both of those institutions to draw in more students to understand the history here and get to know John Steinbeck's residents?
That is a great question, and I'm particularly glad you asked it because I forgot to mention something early on when I was going through the members of the board. One of our board members is Susie Merrill, who works at Stony Brook. And so that was another community partner that I forgot to mention. There is a new, and I may get this wrong, I don't know if it's a new provost or president. There's a new person coming to Stony Brook whose research subject is John Steinbeck.
Oh, wow.
And Susie's supposed to set up a lunch meeting with the three of us so that we could do exactly what you were talking about. One, introduce him to the property, but talk about ways that we could even increase the relationship with Stony Brook.
That would be great, and please let me know how I can be helpful as an alumnus of Stony Brook University, and also I teach at Suffolk Community College, so I'm happy to be of assistance going forward if I can be.
And that partnership with Stony Brook was something that the board had requested when we went through the process
Oh,
originally.
good.
Yeah, that was definitely something we spoke about, and she was very helpful, as Susan Mead as well. So you guys were great to work with on the acquisition. So appreciate all the help there.
One strange coincidence when we were doing this, and we wanted to work with Stony Brook, and we were working with the University of Texas. Brett Anthony Johnson, the director of the Michener Center at the University of Texas, was hired to UT by the Stony Brook president who just left to Yale. She was the provost at UT and she was the one who hired Brett from Harvard to go to UT. And so the relationship even began with Brett knowing the then president of Stony Brook.
Thank you.
Thanks. Lori, were you expecting to say a few words?
But one thing I would add
Well,
is,
come on up to the podium so everyone can hear you.
just one thing I would add is because I give a lot of the tours and I work with the docents that give the tours, just the reaction from the people that come to the home and how excited they are, and it is truly a mix of people. I'll ask people, where are you from, et cetera, and we do get people like, oh, I'm from California, I'm here. But so many of them are people that like, well, I live here, but I've never been to the house, and I kind of knew it here. And every once in a while, someone's like, I didn't even know we had this here, but this is where I grew up, or I grew up here, but now I just come in the summer, et cetera. So it's really, and even kids are so inquisitive with different types of questions and things like that. So it really is very rewarding to share this home with the people that really, really appreciate it, because you're kind of like, well, and even when the house is closed, they see the rest of the property, they really enjoy, and so that's the only thing I would add, is just the experience, and if you haven't been there, please come. But yeah, if you have any other questions.
Lori, I want to share with the board the story with John Steinbeck in the mid-1960s when he was asked to be the chair of the Whalers Festival at the time. He and John Ward were co-chairs, but John Steinbeck had one caveat, that nobody talk about where he lives. And by the way, it is the end of the world, if you ever go down there.
It's not easy to find.
And that caught on in the community, and people don't talk about where John Steinbeck lives. So, and I had the same experience. I mean, I kind of knew that he lived down Bluff Point Road, but we also kind of keep to that as well. And so the community has been true to that promise from the 1960s that we don't talk about where John Steinbeck lives.
No, I can attest to that, because when I first bought a home here, and this was 2012, and I went to the Windmill Information Center, and I said, where's John Steinbeck's house? And the woman said, I don't think I can tell you that. So as of that, it was it. And then eventually I figured it out, and I made my husband blow up kayak and drop it in the water, and I'm like, we're looking for that gazebo, and eventually that's how I saw it. But so to this day, people, and that's something that we also tell everybody if you go on the website, you can't see the address. When you get the directions to come to the house is finally when you kind of see where it might be. People are told not to share it. People are told that you cannot take a picture that includes the address, etc. So we still respect that to this day.
Right.
Yeah. But thank you. It really, I thank you for the support of it and preserving that. And so many people, when they get there, like, oh my God, could you imagine if this was just bought by somebody and what would have happened to it? So, yeah.
Well, thank
Good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Diana.
You mentioned Travels with Charlie's, to be able to see the site and be, the book opens up with the hurricane, and he describes
Hurricane Donna.
the whole issue with with tying up the boats, and so if you see it, it's really a great way to visualize,
Mm-hmm.
his house and
When we were doing the acquisition, I took my daughter there, and she said, "What are we doing?" And I said, "We're going to John Steinbeck's house." She's like, "Oh, I hated that book." And then once we went there, though, to have a new appreciation for, all right, the guy actually lived here. This is kind of cool, and
Right.
to see where he wrote, and it kind of, I think it's helpful for people that don't like supposedly to read. Once you have a connection to something or someone, it makes it more enjoyable, and I think I don't know that it made the book more enjoyable for her, but
Charlie
She
is
was
buried
interested
on the
to see where
property
he-
somewhere.
Oh, is he?
Who?
Travels with
Charlie.
Charlie the
Charlie.
dog. He's on the property somewhere under a willow tree that's no longer there.
Very
Yeah.
It's a
good.
special place.
The first time Lisa Combrick, when she was head of CPF at the time, we were looking for the property. We were in that cul-de-sac,
Mhm.
but there was a truck parked in the little roadway that leads to it, so we couldn't find it. We didn't.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, it was very well hidden.
All right, well, that's a nice presentation. So let's move on to our next topic, which is the proposed code change for the abandoned vessel section. And
Mr.
I
Cambridge
will
has
put
to
this
get to
to
court
rest.
soon, so let's try to keep
Sean
this as
is
brief
here
as
with us.
possible.
So yes, we had several versions of this code. I think there was a disconnect at some point. We had a public hearing that was withdrawn and the resolution had stayed on. So we're at a juncture where if changes are in fact requested at this point, we just have to notice a new public hearing. Sorry if I'm shortening there, Councilman.
No, we got it.
Yeah.
So, Councilman Pell and I had spoken about this draft. The request here was to make all procedures internal to our Marine Patrol Bureau, because they are primarily the folks handling these things. So, the majority of changes are changing procedures from the town clerk's office to the Marine Patrol Bureau. In addition, there is an impounding language, and I just want to draw the distinction. Impoundment is a police power, police function. What we had discussed previously was New York State law to declare property abandoned. And the significance is we can impound a vehicle or vessel and know who the owner is. Very well, most often we do. This code section is to address unidentifiable vessels. So things that are washing up, things that are tied off, where we cannot find the owner. I see that the request was for a 48-hour impound, which certainly we can do. The 10-day period that we had discussed is for that piece of property to be auctioned without a public hearing. If we know who the owner is, we have to have a due process hearing. New York State law says that if it's unclaimed and abandoned, unidentifiable for a 10-day period, we can bring that to a police auction. So that's what we had discussed. It's a nuance that I'm not sure we were all on the same page with.
Thank you.
Sean, I'm okay with the 48 hours because it says at least 48 hours. They can wait longer if they need to. And I'm okay with the notice of posting, but I'm not okay with this language that was removed saying that it can be taken into custody and limiting it to Marine Patrol.
Where are you looking?
Because to remove abandoned personal property, and also it's also struck in again in vessel or personal watercraft creating a hazardous condition.
Yes.
We had spoken about this with Marine Patrol and with Ryan Murphy, and this language was particularly put in here because if it was creating a hazardous condition or it was, needed to be removed expediently, we needed every department in the town to be permitted to, you know, yes, Marine Patrol can handle it at the end with noticing and doing all that, but this was specifically requested by our emergency management director because if it is a hazardous condition, we need anybody in the town to be able to remove that hazardous condition as expediently as possible.
I do recall as the drafter of the first bill that was
That's right.
passed as well. So each sponsor,
Sean, does the language as written, does it bar these departments from coordinating with other agencies?
this draft has Marine Patrol doing every function.
Every
So,
It could
But
just be
Where
kept
does it
as
say
lead
that? It
function.
says Marine Patrol
but so I
and
think
or
that's part of the
Department
reason
of.
we're on for a
Lead
work
agency.
session today is to discuss this. I'm not sure how important this provision is. And like I said, the request initially was to make all functions within Marine Patrol. I took that very literally and put every single function within Marine Patrol.
But it
I'm
says
not sure.
And or Department of
and or
Emergency
the
Management.
Department of Emergency Management, which
Yeah, but there's also times when
There were some others, highway.
Marine Patrol will call highway
parks,
or
yeah, et cetera.
or marine maintenance mechanics or somebody else in to take the vessel
I-
into.
Kind of agree with Cindy and
Okay.
Michael. It should be, but the Bay Constable should be the lead agency. So everything goes through them, and they can contact the maintenance or the highway to give help, or the transfer station for the excavator.
So we can simply add that language back in and move forward with the draft if that works.
But you can't have, you have to have one person in charge.
he wants a lead
Yeah,
agency.
they can post, but we wanted to be
Yeah.
able to, like, if highway or parks came across something, they don't have to call Marine Patrol. They can just get it out of the water and remove the hazard. With this, the way it's written, it has to be Marine Patrol.
I feel better.
I mean,
if it
just
was-
put in or
they would have to
designated
be
agency.
notified. They still have to have someone as a lead agency.
Okay, I can add language to identify them as the lead. That's not a problem.
And coordinate with other agencies.
Yeah,
as,
put some
as
language
required.
like and or as designated, you know, another.
By them.
Yeah,
Because that way, no one can push the button.
yeah. Nobody's looking to limit it.
We
But,
just, but that's why it was there.
So now, with the timing, the 48 hours, I just want to make sure I understand. So prior to the 48 hours, so the boat or the vessel can be there for 48 hours, but we can't do anything to it.
correct.
But then it's like we shall, like we have to
If
impound
it's a
it.
hazardous, if it's
That's
more
what
than hazardous,
the councilman had requested.
but if it's a hazardous vessel or causing hazard or harm, then you can take it anytime.
Immediately.
And it
I don't
also
see
says
that.
for
I
at
don't
least,
see where it says that.
but it also says for at least a period of 48 hours. So in their discretion, they can let it sit there for 10 days and then say, now we're going to impound it. They don't have to do it at 48 hours.
Yeah, so this was intended for when a boat is tying off somewhere it's not allowed. So a drifting vessel or something that's unsecured, this is a police function, like I said. So we had not addressed it in the prior draft because it's usually police issues are discretionary for peace officers. So we generally try not to restrict them, but there was a specific ask to limit 48 hours for tie-offs. So that language was added. We could eliminate it, we could clarify it further if need
I would
be.
put maybe instead of shall be. Because there have been instances where, you know, they don't have permission necessarily to be there, but they can make contact and say, you know, I broke down, or, you know what I mean? Like,
For
so,
up to 48 hours.
It says for at least a period of 48 hours.
I just don't want it to be so specific that it says it shall be, like it may be. I think may
Sure.
is a,
After the 48
it leaves
hours.
it up to their discretion.
This was the
Although then it
councilman's
can sit there
draft.
for a
Um,
long time.
What is your goal with this bill?
My goal is that if someone gets towed in or boat ties to a town or trustee facility, that if you only have a 2-hour maximum tie-up, then after the 2 hours, it starts ticking. They get fined for the extra time, and that if they cannot find the owner, they can take the vessel, impound it, and move it away off the dock instead of sitting there for months.
So this doesn't prohibit or eliminate their ability to ticket it on
No.
day one?
No,
not at all. No, this section is intended for when the owner is not able to be identified. This is an abandoned vessel,
And
usually.
so like, I'm just
missing.
gonna use the example at Bay Avenue because it's one we've all kind of familiar with. So when they tied up, it was actually Marine Patrol that tied that sailboat to that dock.
Mhm.
So at that point in time, it had town permission to be there until we decided what to do with it.
Yes, I've recommended impound in those situations, and labeling it as such.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a situation with a fixed mast, a fixed key. I mean, it was just, it was a, they were trying to get rid of it without costing the town money. But so my question is though, once they take it and they find an unsecured vehicle, they tie it to a town dock,
That's
it
an
now
impound.
has our permission to be
Right.
there.
So it should be posted as such, publicly, but that's an impound. Whenever we take possession of something, that's an impound. So that's in our,
on that instant, when they did tie, they did not stop the impound. If they were gonna impound, they should have started the clock right there on impound.
well, saying in fact,
They
They
just
did.
basically,
it's just the procedure
they just dropped
may
it.
not have followed it, but
Yeah.
the moment the town takes possession, it's an impound.
And then they were just trying to figure out a way to deal with that impound by either getting the boat owner or somebody that the boat owner would title it to take it off the town's hands without having to.
Right. I think part of the idea of this provision in here is the optics of it. That we want
To make it cleaner.
to make it very visible to the public that this is in fact an impounded vessel.
Okay.
I've recommended some kind of stickering on the vessel itself because impound does not mean we have to drag it out of the water and bring
Yeah.
it to the police station. It can go to any town facility. So that was the intent here. I'm not sure if it needs to be printed in the section because, like I said, it's a police power. So it's the discretion of Marine Patrol. It's up to you all, what this section says and how that should be interpreted.
Well, what about the notice provision on the redemption? It looks like we have to post, so 316A-5, we have to post conspicuously in 3 places. Is that separate and apart from the next section 6 that says you also 10 days prior to sale have to post conspicuously? So it's 2 notices that have to be given
Two
and
separate
posted.
notices, because one is for that to comply with that state law, to declare it abandoned. Otherwise, we have to have a hearing and it would be considered a taking. So we need that 10-day minimum on an abandoned,
Who posts?
unidentified vessel,
Who posts for impounded vehicles?
usually the police department. So we can contract with agencies, we can contract with other police agencies.
Because Marine Patrol, they don't have office staff, so
So whatever,
they should just have it done through the police department.
Yeah, we're doing RFP. There are plenty of agencies that'll do these auctions or governments. Either way is acceptable.
So they can team up with the county.
Sure.
So we post in 3 places, and then if they don't, if the owner doesn't come forward within 30 days of that posting, then we can then go forward with the sale after we post again for another 10 days.
And frankly, whoever you contract with, or if you contract with someone to do an auction, they're going to do the posting anyway.
So we can't take it if it's into our possession until 48 hours expires. But you're saying we don't have to take it after the 48 hours, it could go longer, that's discretionary?
So usually impound is a police function, so you could never impound it. If you want to just monitor it, that's fine. This draft mandates an impound within 48 hours, and that's what the councilman has requested.
Because of the word shall?
Shall.
But it says for
For
at
at
least a
least.
period of 48 hours.
Yeah.
That seems discretionary, like it could be there for 2 weeks or a month.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's
I
sitting
think
there for
that's
2
good.
months before we get a phone call that says, hey, this dock's been here for 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good language. So it gives the, because you can tell. I mean, sometimes, right? I mean, most times you can tell whether it's something that's really going to be abandoned. If the boat is in good shape and it's just some guy, he got called away because there's a family emergency or something. That's one thing.
The
But
abandoned ones usually,
yeah, 99% of these are guys who
missing
walked away
equipment,
from the boat. They've
they're missing-
stripped the IDs off and everything.
IDs. they're tied off somewhere where they weren't tied off,
right.
a week ago.
And then we have an auction, if we've ever had one. Nobody comes them. These are abandoned. These are going to be crunched at the end of the day, probably. Most of these.
Some of them might be salvageable if it's, like an aluminum boat or something, but our experiences show these are usually wood or fiberglass sailboats that are in bad shape.
I think the time I've been here, I don't think we've ever abandoned. I mean, ever auctioned anything. Just or ever received any funding for any of
Right.
this.
Usually the things nobody would.
And
really
the county
want.
hasn't either. These are usually junk at the end of the time.
I have one question. Does this apply to boats that are washed up on beaches, not just tied off the docks?
Yeah.
Beaches are usually
Yeah.
hazardous,
Yeah.
so they take them right away.
Sometimes.
Yeah, those should be.
So some of the beaches are within the town's control. Some of them are New York State.
Well, that was my
controlled, some of
follow-up
them are,
question, but yeah,
village controlled. So
that would be the villages.
right. So sometimes this is going to apply depending on where the vessel is.
Okay.
So
So boats that are abandoned that people just cut loose and they end up on our beach, this would
this would
cover it?
apply. Yes.
Okay.
Not in incorporated villages. Not in areas that are deemed New York State jurisdiction.
But Bill
Okay.
said also if it poses a hazard, it could be taken immediately.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's definition of hazardous material right in the definition.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this was crafted again with the intent of a couple of summers ago we had a houseboat that was leaking a tremendous amount of fuel, and we didn't have a code section that addressed this, so we had to just treat it strictly as a hazmat condition. So this was intended to aid that process on its first draft.
We had that
Thank you.
one wash up on the beach over by just west of the Shinnecock Inlet. That thing.
So then really the only changes are adding back in all those town agencies with oversight by Marine Patrol.
But you have to have one lead agency. They have to
Okay,
go through the-
I can do that.
They have to go through the trustees. I mean, through the bay constables.
Okay. All right, I can schedule that. The resolution scheduling a hearing for our next meeting if that's acceptable.
One second. Is there any other changes? Or we're good?
It's really it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's nicely done. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
And you're on for the next one.
I am. You have me again.
Oh, yes.
When you got to get out of here to get the call.
Yes, I have a hearing.
10 minutes.
So this was brought forward at the request of Animal Control through their liaison, Councilman Iacelli. And the Animal Control Division has requested a leash law. There was an exemption in the code as it's drafted currently. The proposal you'll see just simply strikes some language. Their concern, and Ryan Murphy wrote an email supporting this legislation and sent that to each of you this morning. What we see very often is the town is responsible for prosecuting dangerous dog proceedings under New York State Ag Markets Law. And so you'll see someone that says their dog is under their control. Sometimes we'll approach, the dog off leash, we'll run up to a dog on leash, and then you have dog on dog or dog on owner or dog on child type bites. And we see this is the most frequent scenario on dangerous dog proceedings. Either both dogs on leash, one off leash. If everyone's supposed to be on a leash, licensed, it makes the animal control officer's job very easy, because when they appear, you get on the scene, there's either a leash or there's not. It's clear as day who is liable. These tend to be a he said, she said. Everyone is kind of angry and upset when police or animal control officers arrive. Their request is that this would make their job quite more simple, and that's where this is coming from.
So I just have two things on this. One, the way it's written, puts Councilman Pell out of business, because it does not allow you to have a dog unleashed on property not owned by you with permission of the property owner. That language was
Yeah, what was that stricken?
So
Did Ryan happen to mention?
that was stricken due to the idea is we have a lot of cases where so someone will have their dog at like a friend's house and there's no fence and that dog is loose and runs into the street and goes and bites a dog that's being walked on a public street. So that was the intent there. We can certainly, this is at the very preliminary stage here. This is not even entered in minute track at this point. This is a draft.
At my request, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
So the intent here is to make any changes that are needed. We can certainly carve out any type of exception the board would like. This was simply the easiest way to address the issues that are occurring. I'm sure the animal control division would be.
I think Bill's scenario is a little bit unique though, because he has a business. I think what this is primarily referring to, and maybe this can be clarified in the language, Sean.
If you're,
you could.
just put if you're for hire, if the people hire you.
Right, unless you're like you're a business that
Right.
specifically is utilizing a dog for.
Well, it says it. I mean, you could throw it right in.
Sure.
Yeah, there's this exception
Definition
for
of that
hunting,
law.
showing, and
Right.
police work. So we could just add another
Yeah,
function.
for
in there.
hire.
But at the end of the day, I just want to mention to the board too, just, as an aside, I've received comments from my constituents, one in particular that happened just this past summer. Somebody had some company over, just as you referred to, Sean, and the dog, a German Shepherd, seemed probably a nice dog, but just charged up on a neighbor's property and started barking through the sliding glass window. They had their sliding glass window open. The screen was there, but the family certainly felt unsafe, and wondered why the dog owner did not have their dog leashed. And it just so happens that the code, unfortunately, is subjective and allows for that. And I think that in terms of just ensuring the general public safety of the community, it would make sense to be more specific within the code.
But that scenario would have been covered without this change, right? Because the dog was not on the property
It went off the
with
Well-
the owner's permission.
So what the problem is the way this is written before any changes, it's under immediate supervision and control. And our provision for at large, these occur in criminal court, and I have a criminal standard of proof. So someone can really say, like, I communicate with my dog by any means. They could say, I snap, I interpretive dance at my dog, I whistle, I whatever. The
E-collars.
burden is on me to prove that they are not in control of that dog the way this is structured.
Why don't we just say if it's got consent of the owner? It's not
We could
it's
do
at
that.
large if it doesn't have the consent of the owner of the property.
Sure.
So the issue that I have in general with this, and I have dogs, and listen, my dogs are actually hunting dogs, so I can take my dogs to the beach, and I can throw a bumper, and I can say we're right in here. I can do that because I'm training for hunting. So if you have a lab and you don't hunt, you can't throw a tennis ball for your lab because you're not training for hunting. I also have an issue with this because we're still, in my mind, a rural area, right? And so we're bringing people here. We've got more apartments now. We have one town dog park, one in East Quogue. It's the only place. If you put this in the law,
I was going to bring that
Southampton
up.
Village. I'm saying the town of Southampton has one dog park.
And people are asking for them,
Yes, but we have
an
one dog
off-leash
park.
area.
So there's currently one place in the whole town of Southampton where you can go and take your dog off leash if you are not training for hunting or working. And I feel like I get the intent and I understand it 110%. But the code also has all these things in here that you can't disturb the comfort, peace, or repose of any person. You can't chase or otherwise harass any person. Your dog can't. You can't be within 50 feet of any symbolic fencing, leashed or unleashed. Nobody follows these rules. So to Councilman Pell's point of more red tape, this is an enforcement issue a lot of the time.
Well,
And-
just a clarification, that was, he made that comment based on your bill that you introduced, not this particular. draft.
I understand that. I'm just saying that there are things in here that can be enforced that currently either aren't or just overlooked because there are people with their dogs running loose through fenced off areas for plovers, and it's unless you see it, you can't do anything about
Sean,
it.
how many, in terms of frequency of cases that you're dealing with dog bites and stuff and such that correlate to this particular issue that
I'd say
pertain to this
one
issue?
a week. I have one today. That's my hearing.
So this
later
is a
afternoon.
very frequent public safety issue.
Right, so usually the people that are receiving tickets for these types of things, they're receiving all the tickets, unlicensed, at large, dangerous dog, all together. So this is, yes, we respond to complaints of loose dogs and things like that, but this is where basically the harm's already done most times. Someone has been bitten, an animal's been bitten, property's been destroyed already. There's other issues that substantively we're litigating. So this, again, we had drafted this the most simple way with hope for input from the board today. The Animal Control Division, these folks are working very hard, and when they're responding to these things, a lot of times they're trying to restrain a quite angry animal that's bitten someone or another animal, and they really have their work cut out for them.
And this is and just to add on to this, Sean, this is really about eliminating the subjectivity. And just to quote Director Murphy here in his email of support for this particular amendment, by amending the language slightly to eliminate the subjectivity of it and require that the mechanism of control be a leash, it is our belief that the number of bites, attacks, and negative incidents will be greatly reduced. Animal control staff, and this is very important to me, and other authorities will also be reduced because of the subjective nature of the code will be cleared up.
So I can tell you that in the county, because we used to camp on the county parks a lot, the county has a leash law in the parks. And so there was an issue with everybody had their dogs on either those long retractable leads, so they were still getting into fights with other dogs, or they had them on a 20-foot rope that they would walk around and, hey, he's on a leash.
Right.
So then the county said you have to have your dog on a leash less than 6 feet long. So everybody put a 2-foot leash or a 1-foot leash on their dog and let them run around. It's got a leash on. That's what they did. The dogs were in the water chasing a tennis ball with a 1-foot lead attached to it. Because that was the only way you could take your dog to the beach and let it swim. I mean, we have bays, we have oceans, we have, in all honesty, I just can't, because I think, if you're a responsible dog owner, you're a responsible dog owner. If you're not, you're not. And to say you must have your dog leashed at all times in the town of Southampton, when we have one location where you can legally take your dog and have it off leash if you live in an apartment, is not fair to me. It's not fair to the animals, and it's not fair to the people, because let's face it, all winter or all summer, you can't take your dog to the beach between the hours of 9 and 6. But you know what? All winter, when you live here, and it's like something we always love to do. We take our kids, we took our 3 dogs, and we would just walk down the beach as a family. They would run and sniff and play with the kids and chase a ball in the water. And, my Chesapeakes just go in the bay and they swim along the shoreline as we walk. But it's just something we've always done as a family here. I feel like we're slowly, urbanizing this place. And
This
really
has nothing to do with urbanization.
It's long-standing traditions that people have with their dogs, and I'm not taking.
So the
that
public
away.
safety of the community means nothing to you? The fact that
No. There's responsible dog owners that take their dogs to the beach and don't have them on
Councilwoman,
leashes.
he just mentioned the frequency of cases regarding dog bites of dogs that are not properly
And I don't think this is going to totally solve that either, because there's plenty of people that believe that we have. If you look at go on Nextdoor, for instance, and look at what people say about dogs running through neighborhoods, and people complain and they say there's a leash law. There's a leash law. Call code enforcement. There's a leash law. Well, no, those dogs are at large because they're not even near an owner. They're just running randomly through a neighborhood. This doesn't solve that. But what this does do is families that want to take their dog to the beach to chase a tennis ball and play with a stick, you're now breaking a law. That's all I'm saying.
Could this bill be adjusted to
Well, that's
address
why we're
some
here
of the
today. So
recreational
we're here in a work
aspects?
session. We're not in a public
Right.
hearing. We're more in a brainstorming session than anything today.
We hit like a middle ground like this. Like I go to a few neighborhoods developments with the dogs, and I have agreement because it's a leash development. You have all your dogs have to be on a leash. When I first went in there, I said my dogs will not be on a leash if they're working. If they're not working, they'll be on a leash, and that's what we do. When we get out of the car, I have the leash in the hand. If I don't see any birds or anything, they'll put on a leash. We walk to and survey the area. If I walk the dogs down the street, like in my neighborhood, they're on a leash. If I go to the beach, they're playing in the water. Okay, I think most of the attacks, because my dog's been attacked by a Yorkshire Terrier,
Mhm.
and my dog did not fight back, and that was on the street. Okay, and I think most of the problems is where the people are getting fired is on the street.
I
So-
agree with that.
So if we could carve this out, if you're like,
Could limit this to public streets, sidewalks.
I think that would be a great middle
what do you
ground.
think, Cindy?
I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm just saying, as a responsible dog owner, like I said, we would take our 3 dogs to the beach. We would have 3 leashes in our hands, not for our dogs. We could call our dogs back at any
Yeah.
time and they would glue to our sides.
Yeah.
But you have, Joe Schmo walking down the beach with their dog, and their dog is charging ahead of him, going, and they're
Well,
they're
that's the
going, he's
problem.
friendly, he's friendly. I'm like, but my dogs
Mhm.
aren't, and I have control of my dogs.
Mhm.
You're creating the situation, and that's where I get into. It's not the law thing. It's just responsible owners, and it's the same people that take the time to bag the dog poo and then leave the bag on the beach. I mean, there's just things, it says you have to remove your waste. Well, I removed it. I put it in a bag. Well, you left the bag on the beach.
But the externalities and implications for not having a clear regulation on whether or not they are leashed or not, I think, leads to harm within the community. And there are just the Yorkshire Terrier is a great example. But I agree with what striking a balance I think is totally appropriate. And I think absolutely
Streets and sidewalks, I'm absolutely fine.
Well, keep in mind,
Yeah.
this request is not from the people that are, conforming and doing the things.
Yeah.
This is a request from an enforcement division of the
Yes.
town. Every single person they are dealing with, there's been a problem. So this is coming from the folks we hire to do this. So keep that in mind. That's a lens to interpret, the request. I think I can draft something that's a middle ground here.
Could I also ask that you maybe provide us with information on where these attacks are mostly happening, if you're able to provide that information, or Ryan, if he's able to provide that information? Are these mostly happening in neighborhood streets, or are these happening in parks and on beaches? Where are these attacks mostly happening?
I do nearly all of our hearings for dangerous dogs for the town. For the most part, these are happening on public roadways, where usually one dog is leashed and another is off leash,
Yep.
off site, no fence, no control whatsoever,
Right.
kind of running at large. The other place we see these occasionally, are beaches, and more often within the confines of private yards that are unfenced.
Right.
So occasionally we see them. I've seen service workers at a home, like somebody installing cable or phone, something like that. But that's a different scenario. This does not address that.
So if we were to tackle the neighborhood streets,
big chunk
that
of-
would help out the issue.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I'm fine with it. People have, very active breeds that need to run.
I
They-
agree
they
with
get
that.
very
Yeah, no, I
destructive
agree
if
with
they
that.
don't.
And I'm not in disagreement with that.
We can
Love the
usually
beach.
do town and trustee roads, and that would be, I think, a good,
That
Good
doesn't
middle
help with the neighbors too, if they run onto the neighbor's
not so
property.
much.
But
but-
you could put that in, right, private property.
Could we work on that in some way? Could we look at language that we
The
could?
areas you're going to have problems are private roads where everyone has an ownership interest.
Mhm.
Because some, private roads are owned by 10 homeowners, and they have just as much a right to that piece of property as everybody else. So that's going to be our, in the weeds area on this. I can try to draft some language, but that's hard to regulate.
Okay. So, how would we like to proceed with this? What is your recommendation, Sean?
I can put another draft together and go to another work session if you don't
I
mind.
think that would be good.
And also put in something about, not just police work, but, actively engaged in a
For hire situation.
for hire situation.
Sure. Like for mine, or it could be something else too.
While we're in
Traffic
there,
guy
we
doing
may
it.
want to exempt service animals,
Mhm.
just a consideration.
Although most of them
And-
function by being on a leash.
Unless something goes wrong, which we're probably not charging the person on anyway.
Yeah, unless I have to find somebody.
So
for help.
animals for hire, what are the scenarios for that? I know we have a councilman who has a business, and this is not
That
necessarily tailored to him, this is
Could
tailored
really
to
be
a large group.
kind of anything.
I think that's
It could
important.
be someone
Yes.
sniffing for termites.
Yeah, could be exterminators. They have bed bug sniffing dogs. They have
Exterminators.
Good, I just
You
want
can
that
hire a
out
drug
there
door.
because,
yeah,
Thank
all
you.
sorts of
Important.
things.
Hire 'em for birds.
And I also, maybe you don't put service animals in there because everybody can put a service animal vest on their dog.
Yeah, that's a consideration too.
well, but there are legitimate service animals.
Yes,
that
oh, I'm not saying
should
there
be
aren't, but I'm
included.
saying it is abused as
I'm
well.
not talking about the service iguanas, or, but there are, and they're real, and people need them, so I do like that language in there.
Okay.
Thank you for your work on this,
Thank
Sean.
you.
I think
Of
this
course,
is
you're
kind of
welcome.
where it never went, because I think it just goes down a rabbit hole, and then it's just like everyone starts bringing up news. And there's going to be even more scenarios brought to our attention.
Now they'd
in
have to
public
prove
hearing.
it.
Sure.
So,
I think this is a good time to talk about off-leash areas in the town, because
And dog
like,
parks.
like Councilwoman McNamara says, we have one. And
Yeah.
I've had numerous calls
CPF
about folks who
parks.
would like to run their dogs in an enclosed area,
Yeah.
and dogs need to run. And
Yeah.
so if we're doing this, and we should also be thinking about providing that kind of service in places, where people can.
Let their dogs run.
Yeah,
If you'd
Let
like,
'em roam.
I could include that, and do an overhaul of this whole section, if that's something you're interested in.
In what way?
It's gonna be more of a parks.
He's
Exempting
saying
some
like
areas.
set up dog parks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Well,
not
let's
really.
do one step at a time. I think
Yeah,
we should
okay.
just deal with the leash law specifically, and then we'll handle that.
Okay.
Right, that wasn't for you, that was.
Well, I just
Yeah.
meant I can write an exemption in for the one place that exists and. with
Dog
the intent
parks.
of adding-
Oh yeah, absolutely. That should definitely be written in there.
Yeah, there are villages that have dog
There
run
are.
areas, and
there was a lot of pushback for that dog park in East Quogue, believe it or not.
Mm.
A lot of pushback.
Push back
Mhm.
against it.
Neighborhood pushback against it. People didn't want a dog park in their
Didn't want all
neighborhood
the
with
dog
dog
poop.
parking and dog poop. And
Yeah, who takes care of that? Picking up.
The ones I know
Parks
are-
Department.
Yeah, the ones I know is county, right? The a couple different ones I've gone to
Put
are
some
county
pick up
run.
your own poop.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know if they do. We don't go there.
And it's a small dog park too.
All right.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
All right,
Sean.
Sean,
Thanks,
let's get
everybody.
out of here while
Oh,
getting
yeah.
good.
The fencing.
Thank you,
the
Sean.
fencing is.
but there are places where we could put dog runs in that are not necessarily near residential areas.
Oh, yeah.
Give it some thought.
I'm trying to think of Blydenberg and
They
up
might
in
go
Huffman.
not fight back on the Yorkshire Territory. Kind of
It's a public safety hazard as well when one dog engages another and
Oh, yeah.
you're on a leash
Oh,
and the
sure.
dog's running around you
Oh,
and
yeah.
wraps your legs up. I had a
Oh, yeah.
neighbor who was injured quite
Oh, yeah.
seriously.
I
Yeah.
had a friend who rides his
Right.
bike with his dog on a leash, and his
Oh.
dog runs. But the dog runs right next to him, and
Mhm.
never had an issue except for another dog
Yeah.
charging at him and attacking his
Oh,
dog.
oh, yeah. I've had that happen to me a couple of times.
He,
Where you're
he
walking
ate
with
it.
my dog and dogs come flying out of a backyard.
Years ago, everybody's dog was off leash.
Yeah.
Locally here.
well, a lot of people go to the. A lot of people too. They go to like the, especially in the off season or in the summer when schools close. They'll go to the schoolyards and they'll run their dog in the schoolyards
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I did.
because it's
Yeah.
fenced otherwise. You know what I mean? It's kind
yeah,
of
yeah. There's a big field behind my house where I used to do that all the time.
dogs need exercise.
Yeah.
That's why dogs get surrendered because a lot of these breeds don't get the exercise
Yeah.
they need. I mean, it's not their fault that they are destructive
The wrong,
and have
the
issues.
wrong dog for the wrong family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just reading about that. That's the DA's. There's actually a trial ongoing right now. It's reading the news about that. When they let a dog get free in mastic and it attacked a 2-year-old and then it attacked the owner and the 2-year-old. Lucky the 2-year-old's alive.
But that's a lot of the leash law. I mean, it's one thing, but it's a lot of the complaints that I get, especially like Flanders and Riverside from communities or dogs at large. Like
Mhm.
literally dogs just running
Stepped
down
out,
the road.
but she's running back now. She
She's
thought we were
driving.
further behind.
Driving?
Do we want to just put this on for another work session? We're almost on time.
Where is Carol exactly?
Go find out.
You want to do your Updates? You have
I don't have any.
no updates?
Yeah, here she is. She's walking into the front door right now. She thought we were further behind me.
I'm coming right back.
My dog is in the village of North Haven working right now.
You have a tracker on the dog?
Yes. The other one is home, ex-retired.
Oh, hi.
I was told for an hour, I didn't have breakfast and I didn't have lunch, so I said we're gonna get something to eat. It's a good thing I wore my sneakers.
So we're getting people from the other side and families want to have the finger CAC.
Oh, yeah.
Because Angela, the guy from Riverside, rediscovered on the board of Franklin, and they feel like that she's just taking it for him. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Such a nice person, little angel.
she is, but she's also got another side.
Oh yeah.
I think it's becoming like an East Bronx civic issue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
We could start.
Yeah.
She's gonna get asked to start over if you do.
Mm-hmm.
What did I miss?
Let's stop because he should be here. I'm here, you're here. She had one upstairs.
She's a former sprinter. She can run upstairs.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to do that anymore.
Been a long time since I've done that.
She's still got a young kid. She's got to run after him all the time. How old is Chris?
You ready, Marie?
10.
Okay.
Yeah, started 5th grade.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Marie. Doing great. He's got a really tough teacher. You know.
Oh yeah.
He's got the teacher that, you know,
Nobody wants
when
to.
whenever anybody asks,
Yeah.
so who's Christopher having
Yeah,
this
yeah.
year?
No.
They say the name and that.
When did Brookhaven Town become pro housing? Was that recently or?
I don't know. I just put the list in there for you guys, but I don't know exactly when any of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay, Kara, thanks for coming in to talk to us about the New York State Pro Housing Community and what that's all about.
Of course, yeah. So I'll just give you a brief overview. In July of 2023, Governor Hochul signed Executive Order 30, creating the Pro Housing Community Program. The Pro Housing Community Program is an innovative policy designed to reward local governments that are working hard to address New York's housing crisis. Obtaining the Pro Housing Communities designation is now required. It used to be just you would get a priority, but now it is required for local governments to be eligible for certain discretionary grant funds. And the state lists 8 of those eligible grant programs. They are the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, the New York Forward Program, the Regional Council Capital Fund, Market New York Program, New York Main Street Program, Long Island Investment Fund, Mid-Hudson Momentum Fund, and Public Transportation Modernization Enhancement Program.
So whereas before we could, be eligible for these grants, now we won't be unless we're a pro housing
That's
community.
correct. Yep, you used to just get a priority status, but now you must be pro housing to be eligible for any of these great 8 grant funds. Now, the supervisor and I met with the town's grant writer, Jen Messiano, and she looked at these grants and she said there may be 2 that would be of interest to the town. They are the Long Island Investment Fund and the New York Forward Program. And I do have some term sheets to pass out to you all about these 2 grant programs.
Kara, what is our housing situation in the town of Southampton? Could you give us an overview of that?
As far as what specifically are you?
Well, how many units do we have?
We have
How many
about
rentals?
180 some odd
Thank you.
affordable units currently.
Jennifer thought these might be helpful with the Riverside revitalization,
Yeah,
right?
for sure,
Those
yep.
2 grants.
Yep, so I'll just kind of briefly speak about the Long Island Investment Fund. The objective is to provide funding for projects of more than.
Did you have
Well,
something
I was
else,
just
Jennifer?
curious as
Oh, I'm
to,
sorry,
like,
George.
where are we right now with rental units that the town has? How about our stock town-wide, privately held rental units, and where are the trends going now?
I can certainly get all of those statistics for you.
Okay.
I don't have them off the top of my head. So, but I'd be happy to provide them to you.
Okay, I know some of the challenges are a lot of the rentals, historic rentals that people would have years ago are now going to Airbnb. And, so there's a number of pressures on, our housing stock. And it used to be that if you were a young person, you could grab a rental around here somewhere. And, it's not your forever home, but it's, for a while home. We used to have a thing called winter rentals. Remember those?
Mm-hmm.
Where you could, the off season, and people had those options as well. So yeah, I think perhaps another work session on where we are, our numbers, where we've been, and also our school numbers too.
Sure.
Okay.
So the Long Island Investment Fund, the objective is to provide funding for projects of more than 100 housing units that have a clear nexus to economic growth, job creation, or attraction of private sector investment. It can fund machinery and equipment, infrastructure and site development, and design and engineering projects that could include initiatives to support the infrastructure to add multifamily housing, support downtown revitalization, redevelopment of blighted areas. There's $2 million to $20 million in grant money available. The other program is the New York Forward program. The objective is to revitalize New York's smaller downtowns. The funds are used to provide technical assistance for projects such as adaptive reuse, building renovation, and redevelopment, and projects that elevate a specific cultural, historical quality that enhance the feeling of small town charm. Up to $10 million is available in each region, with awards of $4.5 million or 2 awards of $2.25 million. So the requirements for the town would be that the town must show that it has been successful in promoting overall residential housing growth.
Wait, to become a pro-housing community?
Yes.
Yes, these are the requirements, yep. So the town must show that it has been successful in promoting overall residential housing growth, not just affordable housing, but overall housing growth, and that it is committed to working towards correcting impediments to housing growth. The town can start this process by sending a letter of intent to the New York Housing and Community Renewal. Next, the town would fill out templates to document and verify local zoning codes.
Wasn't there something that we had to show a particular percentage of growth in
Yes, so
order to
that's
qualify?
that's the next step after the letter of intent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. So you fill out these templates to document and verify local zoning codes and information detailing local housing permit approvals over the last 5 years. The town must be able to show through the permitting documentation that they have approved either permits increasing their housing stock by 1% over the past year, or permits increasing their housing stock by 3% over the last 3 years. After the submission has been reviewed, the town will be notified of their certification within 90 days. If it's a town that has not seen housing growth, they can still be certified as a pro-housing community by submitting their data and then having the town pass a pro-housing resolution. And I do have a sample resolution for you all to take a look at.
But we would qualify under the first part, so we wouldn't have to do the resolution.
You wouldn't have to do this resolution, right? It appears that we would, after speaking with.
Which first part?
The option one with the 1%.
Increase by 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it appears that we would qualify under that first requirement.
1% in 1 year, and that's from building permits that have been pulled
Yes,
in the
and
town?
that's all
Does
housing-
rebuilds,
All housing stock.
new housing or rebuilds,
All-
or both?
New housing permits that have been issued.
Okay.
So that's on if you demoed a house and are building a new house, even if it's a mansion, it qualifies.
That's correct.
And also
Because
AD.
it's a new permit.
Okay, I was
yeah.
saying rebuild, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
And
And what is
Rebuild counts?
1%?
Doesn't make sense. No, a rebuild counts?
No.
Yeah,
so-
rebuild,
right,
rebuild doesn't.
correct,
It's
right.
additional
It's a
housing.
new, it's a new permit.
Right, right.
And what is 1% of our housing stock?
John, I don't have to answer those
Okay.
statistics. Yeah, I wasn't prepared with
Well,
statistics today.
just-
Yeah, I apologize.
Karen. So also the one would ADUs also be counted as part of that 1%?
No,
Okay.
that would be different. So this is for new residential housing. ADUs wouldn't, well, you know what, I should, they
Yeah,
may.
right,
I
they might,
can
yeah.
clarify
Yeah.
that for sure.
That would
They
be good
might
to know
qualify.
because as
Yeah.
we're considering incentivizing the construction of ADUs with the tax incentive bill that we're looking to
Yeah.
Right.
pass.
I would think they probably
Yeah.
might, right?
Yeah, they might. So
Because
I
it's
can just
housing
clarify
units,
that.
right? Yeah, yeah.
But so here's my question though, we already qualify for this, you're saying? Once
Yeah,
you
you
get
do.
this designation, you have it, you don't have to reapply every year?
You
Yeah,
do.
you do have to submit documentation every year. So, the town must resubmit their housing permit data and any updates to their zoning on an annual basis by the end of Q1, March 31st of the next year to remain certified and to qualify, so, for the grants. So currently, there are 11 municipalities on Long Island that have been certified pro-housing communities. Locally, those communities are East Hampton, the village of Sag Harbor, Riverhead, and Brookhaven Town. So, by becoming a pro-housing community, the town is making a commitment to the state that it is supporting housing production of all kinds, including increasing housing access and choices for current and future residents.
So part of the application is requiring to submit documentation on zoning codes, zoning maps, right, to change some things.
Yes, they
What-
have, New York State provides these templates, which we would then give to our land management department, and they would complete them and submit them to the state.
So my only question, other than that, is there anything, so if we were to apply to the state to be designated a pro-housing community and say we take grant money, does that in any way indebt us to the state? Because I know that the governor has tried to override local zoning in the past, and they just don't wanna go down that road.
Yeah, not that I read in any of the, information that is available on the pro-housing community, website. However, it is making a commitment to the state that you're going to support housing production. So
It
that
doesn't have to be affordable housing.
doesn't have to be affordable housing.
But there is a number of units that we'd have to agree to with respect to obtaining some of these funds, the DRI and the New York Forward funds.
Yeah, exactly right. So some of these grants are for a certain number of units.
Right.
So like the Long Island investment fund, that's
Right.
for units of 100 or more.
So if we were to qualify for a grant, we would have to at least apply those requirements to that project.
Correct.
But the New York Forward doesn't have that.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, the DRI though, right?
So you can't get this Long Island Investment Fund grant unless the development that you're putting forward is over 100 units.
That's correct.
Unless what if the New York Forward funds are encumbered into a broader project? Is that
These are all things, if we have ideas about what we want to use
Mhm.
funding for, I can certainly I'd be happy to call my contact at
okay?
HCR to find out.
Thank you.
So once we qualify, and you said we have to update each year, but we don't have to meet that marker of 1% growth increase each year?
It's according to what the website says, you have to submit your data every year. So once you qualify, as long as you submit your data, I think that would be it.
I'm sure they're going to want to see growth of some kind
Absolutely right.
in order
And
to
changing
continue.
changes to our zoning. I mean,
Yeah.
that's part and parcel to this.
Right.
That's part of the commitment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, people come to us, the town board, for a change of zone, and you know.
Another question to consider, I know that they're looking really at 1% build out, it seems. But what about down payment assistance and other types of funding that we are allocating for affordable housing purposes? Can that be taken into consideration by the state? Because what we're essentially doing is we're creating housing opportunities for people who would otherwise not have that. So
Absolutely, and I think that would be part of the documentation that we would show them that we are committed
Right.
to furthering housing.
Okay.
Yeah. Or housing access, housing opportunities.
There's nothing specific about, it says we have to show their zoning map or zoning code, but it doesn't say exactly what they're looking for. I mean, I assume like the Councilman Scavone is saying that we'd be amending the code to allow for more density, but it doesn't say. It's nothing clear is what they'd be looking for if we submit the zoning code, as far as you know.
As far as how much density or how much,
Well, it just says, yeah, 'cause I mean, it just says submitting the zoning code, well, it says zoning code summary and zoning map file. I don't know, I mean, you might not
So
know this just yet. Just like, what are they looking for? You can submit your zoning code, but what are they looking for in order for you to qualify under option 2? You know?
yes, it doesn't seem like it's requiring a zoning
Qualifying
change,
under
is it?
option 1, so we wouldn't have to go to 2.
Well, you might be qualified on option. We're not 100% sure of that, right? Is that
well,
1%?
I did run this by our land management department, and it does appear that we would qualify under that first option.
Okay.
Okay.
We would be able to show those numbers.
Okay.
the zoning numbers or the 1% number?
1% increase in
1%.
housing
Right.
stock.
Yep.
So what I read earlier was, and this is important, you know, the communities will be required to submit documentation on their zoning code, zoning map, zoning, and the last 5 years of housing permitting, including planning, zoning. So does that indicate, well, I guess I gotta read this. Like the counselors, like Jim said, you know, what kind of zoning are they looking for? Okay, here it is.
Well, we'll just apply for what, based on what we have for the last 5 years. They're looking historically for the last 5 years, so there's nothing we do now to change that.
Right.
So-
And- Right, I mean, we just submit the application, and if we qualify, then we can use some of that, you know, we can apply for that New York Forward grant in connection with the Riverside project.
Or other projects.
It would,
And
yeah,
then-
another
Okay,
project.
it's a zoning
Might not be
code
a
summary.
downside to
All right.
And then Kiola could apply for this Long Island Investment Fund grant.
that. Well,
And it's for-profit developers, so it's over 100 units of housing, it's businesses, it's all kinds of stuff. So he could absolutely get between $2 and $20 million through this fund. Because it's multifamily housing, development opportunities, it meets all, it checks most of the boxes on here.
well, yeah, he could get that community investment fund money too that we were talking about earlier.
So the eligible entities for the Long Island Investment Fund are listed on the term sheet that I passed out.
When is this due?
It's on a rolling basis.
Oh, good,
Yep.
great.
Although, what did they say, it was March is when they,
Yeah, March is when you have to have the, they'll do your application and they'll designate you a pro-housing community on a rolling basis but by March 31st, you have to resubmit your data to maintain your certification.
And so your office would work to put all of this together. Would I assume that you'd have to coordinate also with planning, with some of the zoning stuff?
Absolutely, land management, we would have to work with them on these templates.
I think it's important that we look into this. I think that, we have to consider really improving the situation of housing here in the town of Southampton. And I think it also sends a message to the state that we are serious about this. And we have really, over the last a couple of months or so, we have been making some strides. And I think demonstrating that to the state through our submissions would certainly go a long way. That's just my view.
I agree with you, Councilman, Councilmember Uselli. I think, there is a housing crisis, and we're seeing our young people leave the area. And I think this would be a way forward, and certainly an avenue to bring monies into the community to provide housing in a way that's commensurate with the community. So this is definitely something that we need to do. You look at our schools, and every single one of the schools in the town of Southampton is losing students, with the exception of Hampton Bays and Riverhead. They all have lost students in the past, from 10 year, year to year on the, when we count our population. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. But, it's important, and I think that's an important data point.
Also just in terms of our CHF flexibility, having extra funding from the state helps preserve funds for CHF, which obviously is more directed by, the community in the sense of these are really, community. This would also be community-based projects, but being able to preserve some of the funding in CHF would help us to be more flexible in allocating more funding toward, for instance, down payment assistance, to really have greater effect in the community and the real estate market.
We're dealing with a very strong market, and that's part of the issue here is that people are moving here, but they're not necessarily joining our fire departments, and
Do any of the villages
schools.
in the town of Southampton plan on trying to become pro-housing communities?
Right now, the village of Sag Harbor is already
They're on
a
it.
pro-housing community. I know I have a request for a meeting with the mayor of Quogue. He wants to speak to me about it, but I haven't heard from any other villages at this point.
I just wanted to just make a point on the school numbers and the populations, and, you know, we are seeing a decrease in numbers in the schools. But, you know, bodies and chairs is just one small aspect of what the schools are dealing with, because they are also seeing an increase in student populations that needs, you know, special needs populations and English as a second language learners, and all of these populations require more services and more funding. And so, you know, while I do agree with the councilman that numbers, you know, bodies of numbers may be going down, it's not indicative of their need for funding or the cost associated to these schools.
Which
It's
is an
just one
entirely
small-
different, thing.
Yeah,
And
but
I
I'm just-
completely
it's-
agree with you. Our schools are definitely a point of delivery of social services that are important, and they're dealing with a lot more, especially since the pandemic. That's a good point.
'Cause
I think
mean,
it's
that's-
indicative
it's
to
an
our
argument that's
housing
made a
issue.
lot to say,
Yeah.
well, the numbers are going down, so you can put more people in, you know, and it's not as easy as that.
Yeah, the state is looking at changing their method of funding for schools. And, but again, that's a separate issue. But I think it is an important data point for, what our communities look like. We like people of different ages. Those are healthy communities. We want young people, middle-aged people, older folks, all living together in our communities. Housing is imperative.
Kara, do you feel that having the state's partnership with our housing department would be beneficial, just in terms of our our thoughts about how we're moving forward as a town? Given you've been working with us for a while now, do you foresee that this would be a positive benefit?
Well, as you mentioned, I think that if the town is eligible for some of these grant funds, then there would be less funds that would be required to come out of CHF. So as you mentioned, we would leave more funds for other things like first-time home buyer down payment assistance, like the ADU funding, those kind of programs, where the state money would be able to step in and kind of bridge that.
Offset some
Yeah.
of that.
But the two funds that you gave us look like it's more funding for developers, not so much for us as a municipality.
Well, by becoming the pro-housing community, then if we're working with a developer on a project, we would be able to apply and get that funding for that development.
But also, we could apply directly for that New York Forward one for properties that we own.
Yes.
And there's one of those every year for $10 million.
So it's up to $10 million, yeah.
It says, because it says the DRI annually provides $10 million award to one community in each of the state's 10 economic regions. So we would be competing with,
But I mean, I'm
know.
talking about the New York Forward one. I think
That's what I'm talking about.
DRI and New York Forward, I think
different.
they're two separate ones. So yeah, the DRI is
DRI
the
is
10
one.
million.
But
That's
there's
correct.
10 million
But New York
available under the
Forward's
New York
different.
Forward, but they award 4.5 million or 2 awards of 2.25 million.
That's significant.
I think Riverhead received the DRI award, the 10 million, a couple of years back.
Put in a flood wall.
Well, I like it. I think we should pursue it.
Yes, I think so too.
Does anyone have any concerns about Kara taking the first step in preparing a letter of intent?
No, I just am not
Not sure about
So,
the benefits. of having-
not the benefits. I'm just not very trusting of the state and giving them another avenue into the town. I
Well, the thing
with
is,
what's
if
been
we-
put forward by the governor, it just hasn't aligned with what we as a town have envisioned as, housing for working for our community. So I would like to be very careful on knowing whether or not this would pigeonhole us into, well, if you want to retain this or apply for these grants, then you must do A, B, and C. And, as far as increasing housing stock, if you're increasing, if it's not saying you have to increase affordable housing and just any housing, I mean, there's housing going up all the time in Southampton, so I don't think we'll have a problem making that number, but I just don't want to be beholden to the state to be told what we have to do.
It's
Yeah,
an
in terms of
incentive-based
zoning.
program.
And I suppose we could just decline to renew each year if we saw some issues.
But we are going to be selective, right, in terms of where the funding is applied. So like it's not like we submit to whatever the state wants to apply money to. We can say we want to apply for these funds for this particular project.
You would have to do that.
Right. So it's not like we're just saying, okay, state, land your funds wherever. We're directing where we think that funding would be best spent.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we've heard this many times when we get the state involved and we, apply for money and state monies are in play, then it opens up the housing to everyone in the state of New York. These are state monies, and theoretically the lottery includes everyone. And, we've heard from the podium over and over and over again, why that may or may not be a good thing. I think kind of that's what you're alluding to. So the governor did change her program from 2 years ago, and this town board sent a letter to her indicating that we were not pleased with the program that she put in 2 years ago, as did other local government officials. And so that's why she's gone to the incentive-based programming, and that's what we're pursuing here. It would bring money into the town, within, under our purview to provide homes for people or living spaces or.
Yeah, I mean, I put forward with the support of the former board a home rule message to the governor that we were in lockstep with her on what her housing initiatives were at the time, and
Then she realized it was too heavy.
not a very popular.
So now she's shifted to this incentive, but if you don't do it, you're out of it. You can't get the grant money. Right.
And it should be noted that there were historic increases in school aid. Just an aside, Hampton Bay's got 38.2% increase in their school aid. Nobody talks about it, so I'm just taking this opportunity to plug that. I was happy about it as a former educator. I think that's fantastic.
That is
Anyway,
fantastic.
no, I did nothing.
Do you have a clean copy of this?
The state did.
I can run it out. Oh, she's got it. Thanks. I know what Hampton Beach qualifies because we had so much growth in the last couple of years.
So wait,
Send this over to them.
did we say that we're okay with the first step?
Yeah, which if you don't mind,
Yes,
take
I can prepare that
just
letter.
prepare that for us to.
Absolutely.
I suppose we'd need a resolution authorizing you to sign it.
Yeah, I'll prepare it. I can prepare that resolution as well.
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you so much for
Thank
doing
you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Could be very important.
So, I know you weren't, you're not listed on here for the exec session, but Jackie mentioned that you expected to be, so.
I have several projects to present
Yeah.
to you all, so if you can fit me in.
Well, I don't have any updates, so.
Yeah, so why don't you just wait a minute. Yeah, does anybody have any updates?
I have no updates.
Nothing at campaign.
I have a couple.
Yeah,
Just-
I do too.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
do.
fine.
And I just want to try to be transparent with the public. We had our first joint committee meeting for the future of Eastport held at Brookhaven Town Hall with Brookhaven Town Councilwoman Karen Dunkesnig. It was really good. We spoke about some of the major issues in Eastport. Obviously, Eastport is a hamlet split between Southampton and Brookhaven Town. The members are Ed Schneier from Brookhaven, Bud Missouri from Brookhaven, Donnie Olish from Southampton, and May Zagarelli from Southampton. It was really good, and we're looking forward. We're going to have meetings quarterly. So,
That's good.
yep.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, I joined the Hampton Bays Rotary Club over the weekend for International Day of Peace, where many members from the Lions Club, we had Lisa Goria from the Shinnecock Nation, John Leonard was there as well, who all spoke about the need to really promote peace in the world as we all see what's happening around the world. It's becoming very volatile and unpredictable, and everybody shared a little bit of their personal stories about how they view peace, and I thought it was very nice, and it's an important conversation that we should all be having as policymakers, even on the local level, because what happens on the world stage and on the national stage affects us here locally. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you for doing all of that. Tommy John, do you want to let us know what you're got in mind over there?
I do. Last spring, many of you were involved in a press conference at the Hampton Bays train station trying to get the MTA to include the South Fork commuter connection in their 5-year capital plan. Now, we have found out that this week that the Montauk branch of the Long Island Railroad, which we call the South Fork commuter connection, has been included in the 5-year capital plan, which is just fantastic. And some monies have been allocated. So work can begin. It's not fully funded because fully funded means $260 million for upgrades that are needed in various train stations. We're trying to get the service improved and increased on the connection so that more people will use it, right? We only have one train track, so we need sidings where trains can pull off, another train can go past. We also need upgrades to our train stations as well as upgrades to the signaling system. So that's going to take a considerable amount of design work, and so the MTA has committed to that, which is big news, I believe, for the South Fork. I want to thank Assemblyman Thiel, Legislator Welker, Superintendent Adam Fine, Superintendent Lawrence Clemenson, our Supervisor Maria Moore, and Supervisor Kathy Burke-Gonzalez, as well as Southampton Hospital, and a number of private businesses who all participated in a working group, kind of a steering committee type of thing, to work with the MTA and urge them to include this. So thank you all.
Thank you for providing an update on that to the last Traffic Mitigation and Safety Task Force. We appreciated it. And
yeah, this is kind of, that program is actually where we want to go with this. I talk to a lot of people. They will use the trains if there are more trains, if there's more train service. A lot of people are concerned that they will miss the last train, so they get in their cars. Even with that, we bring about 400 people across the canal each morning during the week by train. That's big.
It sure is.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your efforts on that.
Yeah.
That's very rewarding to get that news.
Coalition.
also, County Executive Romaine sent a letter as well.
As did the mayors and supervisors
Yes.
of the East End.
All right, well, if that's all, then I move to go into executive session to discuss acquisitions and personnel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.